Hello and welcome to episode 52 of the Freo Big Footy podcast. This week we'll be wrapping up the pre-season and starting to have a look at the round one proper with Port Adelaide looming large on the horizon. We'll have a bit of a look back through the West Coast game in round 3 of the NAB Challenge where Fremantle ran out winners, 1 goal, 1 super goal, 13 goals, 17 behinds, 104 to West Coast 1 goal, 11 goals, 10 behinds, 85. Probably a pretty flattering scoreline in the end for West Coast, to be honest, with the amount of shots that we missed. But we'll get into that in a little bit more shortly. Joining us this week is our usual resident Victorian expert. Seppo, how are you, mate?
I'm good, Centurions, and the countdown is on to this start of the season. I'm just looking forward to it after the little test of the waters against the Eagles. It was good to finally get over our local rivals again and just head into the countdown to round 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there was a little bit of talk before the game with a couple of late withdrawals. Obviously, probably Alex Silvani being the main one, and Seppo, and probably just Adam Simpson probably said it best at the end of it. You just really want to get through that last game without getting any more injuries, and there was probably a couple of scares for Fremantle. Obviously, we did lose Subin in the first 5 minutes, which was disappointing after by all accounts, and even what we saw in the pre-season, it had a terrific pre-season. And then we also saw Stephen Hill sort of tweak his ankle a little bit, and also Crozier in the last 5 minutes, or 10 minutes of the game. So let's just hope that those boys are... I mean, Stephen Hill came back on, so he should be right to go. And let's just hope Crozier is right to go as well.
Yeah, hopefully those rolled little ankles don't impact them anymore and they can get back out there, because we've got a couple that sat out that game. There was the likes of Ballantyne, Duffield, Mzungu and Barlow, and even guys like Taberner that are sort of all sat this game out and probably get a chance to play for Peel, I believe, next week and push themselves, because the players out there today certainly... you could definitely, because there was an extended squad for these NAB Challenge games, so you have to cut down that list again. So if you take out the injured players, you're almost sort of got a 22 there. But we're going to need a balanced side for round 1, and we certainly saw a lot, even with our depth and fringe players, the guys in their first, second, and even third years. Tom Sheridan was one that impressed me and probably played the best game he's ever played for the club so far in his development and what he did. So he obviously had a new task for him playing down back, and I thought it was quite odd that they had him listed at a half back and Sutcliffe half forward. It's usually the other way around, but it was good to see a couple of the players go into different positions and try it out.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we've probably, out of anything else, that we can take out of the pre-season, Seppo, rather than... obviously, the key is you can see they're trying to get better ball movement through the middle and moving that ball a little bit faster, probably a la the Hawthorn model. But I think one thing that we've really noticed is that the sort of emphasis by the club and probably Ross Lyon in terms of producing better or more versatile players. We've seen, obviously, Chris Mayne required to go back and play in defence at times. Tommy Sheridan, as you just mentioned, was pushed back into defence at various parts and probably playing that small forward, and then rotated more through the wing later in the game. And then obviously just trying to get, as you said, Sutcliffe up a little bit more. Clancy Pearce and De Boer obviously trying to take that role with Crowley being out. And then the other obvious one we had missing was Zach Dawson as well, Seppo. So a few guys trying to put their hands up, but we probably can't afford to lose one more of our bigs down in defence. Otherwise we could be in a little bit of pain, I think.
It was great to see actually Sutcliffe push up, and we kicked one super goal, a normal goal, and missed one else. So it's great to see that he's one that's capable of a big kick, and usually he's driving us from the back line. And without Duffield there, we've probably lost a bit of it, but it's good to see guys there that are capable of it. I even liked, and it's been mentioned on the forum today, just reading that Duffy was actually playing a better game higher up the ground rather than close to goal. So it's good to see that we've got some other guys that can actually move pretty quickly, let alone kick the ball, but actually move themselves and got some set of wheels. So it's great to see guys like Hill and Sheridan and Duffy that they actually move pretty quickly. So
yeah, Duffy has got a pretty decent set of wheels on him, and obviously you could see that in that. I think it was the last quarter there where he sort of broke away from just on the other side of the centre square and went for the 9 goal. Oh no, sorry, in the third quarter it was, and he certainly burned off the West Coast player, but unfortunately just missed a long shot. I think the other thing, Seppo, that probably we could take out of that game is that despite 207 or so replies on the forum, that Chris Mayne, I think, will definitely be a lock for a come round one.
Yeah, he's certainly really shown that he's actually so versatile. Probably one of the more versatile players on the whole list. The fact that what he does forward and back, and even during the game he was up and back, but what he does with his pressure and the way he almost has that hunger back, and you just think last year that it was just a down year due to injury or something that held him back, because what he put on today was winding back the clock a bit to that 2013 form. And like someone mentioned, he finished second or third in our best and fairest a couple of years ago. So he's a brilliant player to have, and you kind of put him down towards the end of the 22, but he is certainly one of our better contributors there, and he doesn't necessarily show it on the stats sheet, but you just have a look at the highlights, and the way he goes in and hits it hard is what we need out there. So it's great to see that he got through unscathed and looks like he's ready to contribute this year. The bit that really surprised me is the fact that, and I suppose they got managed well, but the fact that all of Sandilands, Pav and McFarlane got through the game pretty much unscathed. I'm not sure if Sandilands and Pav had bits of their leg worked on at stages, but they all look in ripping nick. And if we can keep those three and rest them at crucial parts of the season, that will go a long way, I reckon, to having a good season with those three out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key for us, obviously, is making sure McFarlane's right to go, come the end of the season. And if he, because he's just such a general back there, and the defence just looks so much stronger with it. And it's been interesting with the. We've obviously had a number of different guys rotate through that defensive back six, Seppo, even last week with Sydney and then against Melbourne. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Seem to, as you said, they all seem to play the system and the role pretty well, and they've all held up. And obviously, McFarlane's a major key to that.
And the worst thing is that I suppose out of those three, it looks like McFarlane's probably the most valuable at the moment, because what he can provide and the way that Kennedy sort of showed against us that, you really do need a decent centre half back that can actually run with the big power forwards. And just watching a couple of the other NAB Challenge games with, the likes of Mitch Clark and Tom Hawkins for Geelong and some of the other sides that have got good pairs of key forwards, they'll definitely stretch us if we're missing. Start to lose a bit more than just Dawson and Silvani, because if we can get those guys back, we'll be in good stead. But you really do need some of those players, and one that we definitely need out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think yesterday you could even see McFarlane tended, once Kennedy pushed out past into the centre square, he tended to let him just have that little sort of lead up mark type position. But once he got inside the 50, he sort of tended to play him a little bit closer. So I don't think there was sort of over, because obviously they felt that West Coast didn't have a lot else to kick to once they got the ball outside of Kennedy, and you could sort of see they were probably spending a little bit more effort on Lecrae. They're just lacking that little bit of class up forward, with the exception of those two players. And what did you think of the? Obviously, I don't think they can go in with both Clancy, Pearce, and De Boer, Seppo come round one. I think only one of those guys is going to get the gig. Which who do you think probably put their hand up for the position?
Well, I like De Boer's earlier games at both Melbourne and Sydney. This one he dropped back a bit, and I like Clancy's more, but it might have been because he had the job on Selwood, I think, and kind of got loose a bit and almost gave up on a tagging job. I think he had his sort of own ball for a while and really helped with our ball movement. I didn't actually see if De Boer had a harder tag on possibly Hearn or someone else on there, but a lot of the Eagles players were quite limited. There was only one or two that really stood out for me, with Josh Kennedy and Marston probably having really good games, and I suppose Lecrae at certain stages when he got around the ground. But out of the two, I'd probably say De Boer just at this stage, but Clancy's definitely shown that he's capable and definitely attended a lot of the centre bounces. So they're obviously training him up for something and almost take that Crowley replacement tagging role if we're going to use it in the middle.
Yeah, well, I think it depends really. I think it's going to be a horses for courses type thing, because you look at the individual player that you're looking to tag, and I think De Boer's a little bit more dangerous forward to centre. He has got a reasonable set of hands. I mean, his set shot probably lets him down a little bit at times, but he kicked two goals last week.
Kicking department, definitely.
I mean, he kicked 2 goals last week against Sydney, and he would have got some decent odds at the start of the game if you picked him as our leading goal scorer. But Clancy's probably a little bit better ball user around the ground, and you'd have to think that probably Robbie Gray would be one of those guys if Mzungu, especially if he's not 100%, Robbie Gray or someone like that would be the player they're going to be, or Travis Boak, come round one, will be the player that they're going to be targeting. So it's going to be a sort of tough gig for whoever gets that role, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Anything else stand out for you, Seppo? I thought the other sort of stand out, although he didn't get a lot of the ball, I thought Connor Blakely's certainly highlighted his potential with, the efficiency that he used the ball. He made good decisions pretty much all day, and that little kick to Pav in the last quarter was exquisite. But just his handballing in traffic, I thought, was outstanding as well.
It was like I said on the forum after watching that game. He's playing like a second year, third year player. He's got a body, a build. He's got footy smarts, and just the way that he moved around shows that he can be put into really tough games. And a lot of people were expecting Weller to come on, and he's looked okay at training, but Blackley's definitely cream of the crop so far out of the guys that are running around. And maybe he's going to get the vest early on, but if he does get full games, it looks like we've got something on our hands here. And it's just exciting to see.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting thing yesterday. A lot of the players that sort of stood out for West Coast tended to be younger guys. Like I thought Sheed was quite good yesterday, and Lamb had little bits and pieces, but I think he's still going to be a little way off. But I think he certainly showed a fair bit of potential. But it just tended to be that West Coast, some of their more experienced players just were pretty average. And if you think that the likes of those sort of guys are going to get games all year, they could be in for a pretty long season. I know they probably have 3 or 4 of their best out, but there wasn't a huge group missing, and obviously Mackenzie's a big loss for them. But as I said, there could be a long season for those guys, so it's hard to sort of take. In the last quarter, they sort of looked like they put the cue in the rack for sort of the first 10-15 minutes. They subbed Sandilands out, and Fife gave away a silly 50, and they got close, and then they sort of pulled away again. But it'd be interesting to see what Lyon thought. In the press conference, he was pretty happy with the performance overall.
And by the sounds of it, we've heard that the actual game, the trainers are going out there to tell them to go hard for 10 minutes and come back off and just take the foot off the pedal. So you could sort of see why West Coast got into the game when the sort of foot came off a bit. But the way that Fife dominated and Walters just made opportunities out of nothing was brilliant to see. And I'll tell you what, with this, the way that I've seen things being thrown out by the MRP this year, there's more, I think 6 things that were cited for this round, and all of them fines. It's putting Fife in a very good position to win a Brownlow this year, because if he's going to dish up something like he has there, and providing they don't decide to sub him out at 3/4 time like they've done last year in round 1, he'll be up for a lot of votes, and I'll be throwing my money on him for a Brownlow before he shortens up too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you sort of tend to take him a bit for granted at times, when you watch him in there. And just his ability and, just that flexibility he has of being able to take any player he has forward of centre and just take that mark, just add such a weapon. And that's, really why, we need those guys like Subban and that available. And, and I think we talked about it in probably the first podcast of the year, Seppo, or maybe the second one, where we just, the likes of Sheridan and their development is going to be crucial for us this year, because if he can come in and, hold that role, it just allows us a little bit more flexibility with being able to sort of move Fife forward and rotate him through that forward line and just be a lot more dangerous.
It's quite interesting when Pavlich goes into the midfield, and you sort of question it, but if you've got Fife going forward, there's something to go to, and if those centre square bounces aren't exactly Pav streaming out, they're kicking it forward, it might be Hill or someone else, providing you got Fife up there, is a great marking target. And I was actually quite surprised at how well Clark and Hanneth did around the ground, because I was quite critical on his speed and everything. So he did look slow at some stages, but that little passage of play where Pav fed it into the centre and he just cut off that Eagles player that was about to pick it up, and Hanneth slotted that mark. He looked nothing like a ruckman there, and it's certainly a big improvement on last year. So if we've got time without Sandilands and Clark and Griffin, Hanneth shows that he can play as well. So that was actually pleasing to see.
Yeah, it was in the last quarter, and they were probably playing a couple of witches' hats down there. But obviously Clark did show a little bit, up forward, and that's what everybody needs to be able to do for us. It's no good him just being a ruck or being able to sort of run around the ground. He has to have some sort of presence up forward if we're going to be able to take that next step this year. And obviously he's had a much better pre-season than last year, where he sort of did the festival scene. And let's just hope that hopefully he can be that little bit more dangerous up forward, because, as you said, I thought Hannes showed a little bit at times yesterday. I still think he's probably behind Clark overall, but at least he did show that he can contest up forward.
I suppose there was two or three players, like Mundy seemed to have a quietish game, and I think Neil as well sort of backed off a bit from his usual great performances. So at least there's a bit of improvement there, and if some of those guys start to pick it up, it'll be looking very good coming to round one.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing as well, Seppo, we've probably it's been chatted a little bit on, I think, on the boards, that most people would have. There's probably been discussion whether Daniel Pearce or Tommy Sheridan, because they sort of, were the same sort of players, and who would be the pick round one. And obviously, you'd have to think Daniel Pearce would need to have a pretty decent game for Peel this week to get another sort of game under his belt, or certainly next week before round one, if he wants to be a chance to play Port, I think, because at the moment you'd have to have Sheridan ahead of him based on what we saw yesterday.
Definitely. I think from what I've seen so far in the pre-season, and I suppose Daniel's missed quite a bit, Sheridan would almost be ahead of him, and I think, I'm not sure if we're going to see, I noticed that round one it will be Daniel Pearce's 50th consecutive game with the club, so there is a chance that he might not make it, only by pure pushing from other guys outside this 22, with guys like Sheridan and some of the others really just making him work for his spot. So he might have to do it through Peel. I'm not sure if he's going to be given the opportunity, because I'm not sure if he can play this week, go to Peel and then make it back for round one, because they might be forced to have the week off. So it'll be quite interesting to see come round one, based off that one game, if Pearce can make it.
Yeah, absolutely. So there'll be... So, I mean, even though we said we probably are still missing 4 or 5 of our better players, it's still going to be quite tough for some of those, to pick that round one side. So it does show that we probably do have a little bit more depth in the, in the club. And I think I think most people would say we comfortably would go to 30 deep. I think beyond that, we've probably got guys who probably untried or untested, but I think most people would feel pretty comfortable that up to about 30, 31 players, I think, would be comfortable playing in an AFL environment at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to see guys given an opportunity. There's one annoying thing that I've seen, though, is we're probably lacking for round one when we come against Port Adelaide, that have got guys like Gray and Wingard and Need and Wines, and some of those guys that always seem to trouble us. We haven't actually tested out Gray, and he's been named emergency 3 times, and I even saw him there in the rooms warming up with the other guys, that he hasn't had a run yet. And if we don't get guys like Duffield back, and say something happens to Spur and he cuts himself open again like he seems to do every week, we're going to be in a tough position. And it sounds like Gray is groomed for almost this little small defender role. I'd just love to see him exposed to AFL level, and not just keep on putting good performances in at Peel this year and just be selected as emergency. So hopefully he does get his chance at some point. But yeah, just hope something can happen with him.
Well, it was interesting last year, Seppo. I mean, obviously, went down and watched quite a few of the Peel games, and Brady Gray in the first half of the season was used in a run-with role, probably similar to what Clancy Pearce and De Boer have been. And he did a pretty reasonable job at Waffle level. He got some pretty tough assignments there, and he, obviously, comparing AFL midfielders to Waffle midfielders would be, chalk and cheese. But at the end of the day, he still managed to get in quite good positions more often than not. And as you said, he did show ability to go down back and play as a small defender come the end of the year, because it's certainly an area we definitely need a little bit more depth in the club at. And obviously, if we could do that, we could release the likes of Sutcliffe and even Sheridan, who's played there, up into that midfield role and give us a little bit more run and carry through there, not just relying on Hill all the time.
I suppose the only other thing we're missing out on is the really testing out of Taverner and Atnas, because certainly from that first intra-club or from the training sessions that we've watched, is those two look like they're ready to really step up this year, and both have sort of just taken that little step back, or just really struggled with the last couple of weeks. So hopefully we've got some good backups for Tall Timber up forward because we're going to go with a nice small forward line, I think, if we don't get one of those two at least back into the side. So hopefully that's something we can look at over the next couple of weeks because we've got a tough couple of assignments in the first 4 rounds of the fixture.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, probably the one area that was a bit of a concern, obviously, yesterday, Seppo, was the goal kicking. When we went down and watched training, the two of us went down and had a look, and they obviously spent a fair bit of time at the training, doing the goal kicking. And unfortunately, yesterday, a lot of the kicks they missed were not necessarily difficult chances, within that sort of 25-degree angle from the middle. So they were a lot of them were certainly less than 45 degrees and probably 40, 45 metres out, and we missed just way too many. We should have realistically buried them in that third quarter where we were dominating. We just sort of let them hang around, and we saw that happen last year in the final against Port Adelaide where we were dominated in that first half and ended up costing us the game.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at some of the culprits, I know Fife kicked a goal, but he missed two, and they were sort of gettable goals far to the left and right. I suppose there was a couple others that had nice clean shots at goal. I know Crazy's usually a good kick, and Tommy Sheridan kicked a good one, but there's probably a couple other players like Pav and Clark missed, I think, a couple each. So if we start to convert some of those behinds and not end up with more behinds than goals, if we can just switch, 13 to 17 to the other way around, we're going to be laughing this year and actually putting sides away and actually develop a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, percentage is going to be an important thing, especially as you said, we've got pretty difficult draw, and we sort of need to play a little bit like, the West Coast flat track bully type thing, when they do play those weaker sides, to be able to sort of bury those sides and, not just be content with a 40, 50-point win, but actually sort of try and build that percentage up a bit. Any other things stand out for you, Seppo?
Not from the game. I think it was all sort of very good. The only thing that really looking forward to now is really just getting there and getting into round one now. So hopefully will be good results from Peel and some of these other guys with injuries get up, because it'll be great to go into round one with only players like Crowley, Dawson, say Subin Silvani unavailable, because the rest look like they might be able to pull through, and maybe Ballantyne if everything goes right for him. So we actually have, considering what's happening at a lot of other clubs and missing best 22 players, and those four that I've just mentioned are sort of at least not in our best 5 or 6. And that's all we want leading up for the last 10 or 11 days we've got before we hit round one.
Yeah, and obviously this week will be a pretty crucial week, I think, with Peel playing West Perth up at HBF Arena. So it'll obviously give there'll be a lot of interested onlookers, I think, to see how those, or who lines up for Peel and how they perform on the day, because obviously week after we get straight into it against Port, and we need to obviously put our best foot forward. I mean, I think come the middle of the year, I think like last year, Seppo, I think we're going to go on a pretty reasonable run through the middle of the year when we play some of those bottom sides. But the reality is, if we want to be a top 4 side, we're going to have to at least worst split 50-50 those games, those first 4 or 5 games where you're looking at Sydney, Hawthorn, Geelong, Port Adelaide, those sort of things, those sort of sides.
It's going to be a tough start to the year, and I think the finish is, again, a bit tough, but it's all about just getting the results, and I don't care if they're 1-point wins or 100-point wins. I think these early games are going to be crucial.
Yep. All right. And Seppo, anything on the boards or any competitions to sprout before we close off today? Obviously, we're counting down towards the end of chances for Supercoach and footy tipping and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's quite a couple of competition, I think, still going. We've got the actual Big 40 tipping, so we've got a thread sticking up there if you want to get into the Freo board tipping with a chance to win prizes and membership for the board. So make sure you click on the link and get involved for the tipping to share a bit of banter and bragging rights amongst the guys, and have a look for all the other competitions with the fantasy. And Sam FFC is running the Tontine tipping competition again, where sort of sudden death, which is always exciting to go through. So make sure you get yourself involved in that as well if you're on there. And just keep an eye out for all events. So I know that for the people in Melbourne, the clubs put on a round one Purple Haze party at the local Great Northern Hotel where I usually go to watch the games. Unfortunately, I won't be there, but it's a good opportunity to get down there, and I think they're going to deck out the whole pub for our round one game against Port. So, yeah, have a look around for the details for that. And, yeah, I'm just looking forward to getting to the round one now.
Yeah, no, it should be terrific. And obviously we'll have a lot more in-depth look at that next week, Seppo, when the sides come out. And as I said, it'll be one of those games that, you know, will be certainly a bit of added spice there because obviously Port and Freo, you know, always tend to have a pretty red-hot go at each other regardless of where the ladder position is. All right, well, we'll leave it there for this week. And obviously thanks again for joining us this week, Seppo.
No worries. Always great to be on and love talking footy, and it's not too far away now.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget to either PM myself or Seppo if you're interested in coming on board and joining us. You just need a, you know, just a Skype account and come and join us on a Thursday night and have a bit of a chat about the game and the previews. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you again next week. Bye for now.